Hey folks, pull up a chair. I never thought I'd find condoms in my wife's car at 67, especially after 32 years with no need for them. That's how this whole crazy tale kicked off. And if you've got a spell, I'll spill it all for ya. I'm Jim Harrison, just a retired gearhead from Boise, Idaho, with a story that's got more turns than a mountain pass in a January snowstorm. It's raw, it's real, and it's got a heck of a finish. Stick around. 'Cause it's gonna hit you right in the heart, and leave you feeling a little taller by the end. Picture this. It's a crisp Tuesday morning in late October 2025, and I'm out in my garage 500 square foot slice of paradise crammed with tools, oil cans, and the sweet smell of gasoline that's been my lifeblood for decades. I spent 40 years wrenching cars through Idaho winters, fixing everything from busted Fords to finicky Chevys. So this little spot's my kingdom now that I'm retired. The leaves are crunching outside our ranch-style house. A cozy place with a wide porch facing the foothills, and I'm sipping coffee from my chipped mug. The one Ellen gave me for Father's Day back in '98, says, "World's Best Fixer," in faded red letters. Ellen's my wife, 64, still got that spark. Workin' pime selling houses while I tinker away. We've been hitched 40 years, raised 2 fine kids. Matt's 35, a welder with 2 little ones, and Sarah's 32, a nurse with a boy of her own. Life was rollin' smooth, like a V8 purrin', down Highway 55, or so I thought. That mornin', I'm enjoying the quiet. Sun slantin' through the garage window, dust dancin' in the light. When my neighbor Bill hollers over the fence. His old Dodge pickup's deader than a doornail, and he's asking for jumper cables. No sweat, I tell him, and head to Ellen's Ford Escape parked out front. She'd taken it to a showin' the day before. Left it sittin' there with a thin coat of frost still clinging to the hood. I pop the door, duck under the passenger seat where I stash extra cables, and my fingers brush something crinkly. A small box, half hidden by a crumpled Boy State cap. I pull it out, and my gut drops like a bad transmission slippin' gears. Condoms. An open pack, 3 missin'. My heart starts poundin' like a jackhammer, coffee mug shackin' in my other hand. And I just stand there, staring at in the gray light filterin' through the pines. Now folks, let me set this straight. I had a vasectomy after Sarah came along 32 years back. Doc said I was shootin' blanks, and Ellen and I laughed about it over beers at the Ram, figurin' we'd dodged that bullet for good. So why in the heck are these in her car? My mind scrambles. Maybe a client dropped them, some young hotshot buying a house. But that don't hold water, Ellen's too tidy for that. I flip the box over, seen the expiration date, 2027, brand new. My throat tightens. A cold sweat pricklin' my neck, and I'm hit with a wave of something I ain't felt since my dad passed. Pure, raw dread. At 67 you figure you've seen it all. Kids grown round here growing up, house paid off, 2 acres apiece stretching out back with a little creek I fish in summers. This is a kick in the teeth, a cold splash on a life I thought was rock solid. I stumble back to my stool, coffee spillin' a little on the concrete floor, and sit heavy, the box still in my hand. Memories flood in. Friday night dances at the VFW, Ellen in that red dress swayin' to Sinatra. Her hair catchin' the light like fire. Rebuildin' Deli 68 Mustang in this garage, her hand in me wrenches, grease smudged on her cheek, proud as punch when it roared to life. Our first place in '85, a drafty little rental on Warm Springs Avenue, laughin' as we painted the walls with cheap rollers. Was it all fake? 40 years. 4 decades of morning coffee, late night talks. Scrappin' by when the shop slowed. Gone in a heartbeat. I could've tossed that box, pretended it was nothin', gone back to my day like some fellas might. But that ain't me. I faced worse. Blizzard shuttin' down the shop, customers hollerin' about bills, buryin' my dad at 59 when his ticker gave out. If I could rebuild that Mustang from a rusted heap, I could handle this. A spark lights up inside me, not just anger, though there's plenty of that brewin', but something fiercer. Resolve. I deserve the truth, darn it. And I ain't one to sit around wonderin'. My hand steady, coffee mug hittin' the workbench with a clink, and I decide right then. No sulkin', no whinning. I'd play detective. Get to the bottom of this, 'cause a man's gotta know where he stands, especially after all these years. You folks ever feel that moment when life throws a curve and you swing back? That's me. Standin' in my garage, holdin' a box that's more than condoms. It's a question I'm gonna answer. Boise is a small town, tight-knit. Folks at the Elks Lodge, the senior center. They'd never guess the storm brewin' in me. I take a deep breath, the smell of oil and metal groundin' me, and set my mind to it. This ain't the end, it's the start. Hang on, folks. This ride's just crankin' up, and I'm tackin' ya with me. So there I was, folks, sittin' on my old stool in the garage, staring at them condoms like they'd talk back and spill the whole story. Heck, I didn't want to believe it, but something wasn't right. and I wasn't about to let it slide. I'm Jim Harrison. Been around the block a few times, 67 years of fixing cars, raising kids, and building a life with Ellen, my wife of 40 years. She's 64 now, still got that fire in her. Selling houses part-time while I tinker with my old heaps out back. Lately though, she's been humming a happier tune. Talking up new clients at our Elks Lodge suppers every Wednesday. Taking more late showings than Boys' quiet little market oughta need. I ain't no fool. I started connecting dots, and they weren't drawing no pretty picture. I leaned back, the stool creaking under my weight, and let my mind wander back over the months. Ellen's always been a go-getter. Sold our first house in '85 when Matt was just a tyke. Helped put him through trade school when money was tight. She'd come home from those early days tired but proud, telling me about the folks she'd met, the deals she'd closed. I'd listen, grinning over my beer, thinking how lucky I was to have her. But these last few months, she'd been different. Brighter, sure, but distant too, like she was living in a world I couldn't see. She'd breeze in smelling of some flowery perfume I didn't buy her, brushing it off as open house stuff. When I'd raise an eyebrow, I'd nod, trust in her like always. 40 years'll do that to ya. But now that trust felt shaky, like a loose bolt you can't quite tighten down. I set the condom box on the workbench, its crinkle mocking me, and got to thinking. What else had I missed? She'd been taking her Ford Escape out more'n usual, coming back with vague stories. Showing a place on the east side, meeting a buyer downtown. Boys ain't that big. Takes 20 minutes to get anywhere, 30 if traffic's bad on State Street. So why's she out till 9 some nights, when most folks ain't looking at houses past supper? I remembered her chatter at the Elks Lodge last month. Me in my flannel, her in a sharp blazer, laughing with the gulls about a big fish client she'd hooked. I'd grinned, proud of her hustle. But now that laugh felt like it was on me. My chest tightened, a dull ache spreadin', but I shook it off. Ain't no use feelin' sorry yet. I went back to her car, figurin' there might be more to find. The garage door was still up, cold air creepin' in, and I rifled through the glove box. Nothin' but old maps, a pack of gum, a pen from some real estate outfit. Then I popped the center console, and there it was. Crumpled receipt from a diner 50 miles off in Nampa. Dated last Tuesday, when she swore she was at an open house 5 miles from home. 50 miles ain't a quick jaunt in these parts. The receipts for 2 coffees and a slice of pie. 12.37, paid cash. My blood boiled, hot enough to fry an egg on my forehead, but I kept my cool, tucking it in my pocket. Who's she eatin' pie with out there? I wondered, picturing her at some roadside joint, gigglin', with someone who ain't me. Then her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She'd left it chargin' when she headed out that mornin'. Something she don't usually do. I ain't one to snoop, folks, but this wasn't just curiosity no more, it was survival. I grabbed it, punched in our anniversary code, low 923 FIC. And there it was, a text from Mike client. Can't wait for Thursday at the cabin. My breath caught, a sharp stab hit in my ribs. Mike, cabin. What in tarnation's going on? I scrolled up, hands shaking. More messages, flirty ones stretching back weeks. Loved the lake view last time. One said, dated 2 Fridays ago when she'd claimed a girls' night at Judy's place. Wear that blue dress again. Another read. My jaw clenched so tight I could have cracked a walnut. Lake view. Then it slammed me like a freight train. Ellen's new hobby. Paintin' classes at the senior center. She'd been bringing home these pretty little landscapes. Cabins by a lake, pines reflectin' on the water soft and dreamy. She'd show 'em off, saying they were imagination. And I'd hung one in the den, proud as a peacock of her talent. You got a gift, hon. I'd told her, kissin' her cheek as she blushed. Now I saw it different. They weren't dreams, they were memories, and not with me. That stung worse than a rusted bolt snappin' in your hand. 'Cause it wasn't just her body strayin'. It was her heart. Paintin' a life I wasn't part of. I could see her now, brushin' hands smillin' at some fellow while I sat here, clueless, fixing carburetors. My throat burned, a lump risen. But I swallowed it down. Ain't no tears yet, not till I know for sure. Folks, it hurt. 40 years together, and I'm wonderin' if I've been blind all along. I could hear her voice in my head, laughin' at that Elks Lodge supper, tellin' Judy and the gulls about her busy schedule. Was I the only one noddin' on it? My hands shook. Not from age, but from a mix of mad and sad I hadn't felt since I lost my shop to a slow year in '92. Back then, I'd clawed my way out. Took extra jobs, fixed tractors on weekends. Kept us afloat till things turned. This felt bigger though. Like losin', a piece of myself I didn't know was up for grabs. I thought of Matt and Sarah, how proud they are of their old man. How we'd sit round the fire pit out back. Roastin' marshmallows with the grandkids. Was that all slipping away too? The garage felt colder, the hum of the fridge inside louder, and I sat there, staring at that phone like it was a snake. But I've pulled engines apart with less to go on than this, and I wasn't about to let it beat me. I set the phone down, gentle like, and let that fire build. I wasn't just mad. I was ready. Thursday was coming, and that text about the cabin was my lead. I'd follow her, see it with my own eyes, 'cause guesses weren't enough. I needed proof. You ever get that itch, folks? When you know something's off and you can't rest till you face it. That's where I was, heart pounding, but head clear. Ellen might have thought she had me fooled. But I've been around too long for that. Time to take the wheel, 'cause this old dog's got a few tricks left. I hatched a plan right there, the smell of oil and metal grounding me. Matt's pickup, a quiet tale, a camera maybe. Boys is small, but I know its backroads like my own hands. You with me, it's about to get real interesting, and I ain't backing down. Alright y'all, Thursday rolled around and I wasn't sitting idle. Took my son Matt's pickup and tailed Ellen like a regular Sam Spade. Felt kinda proud, honestly. I'm Jim Harrison, 67 years young. And after finding them condoms, that diner receipt, and them flirty texts, I wasn't about to let this mess knock me down without a fight. I'd spent 2 days stewing, piecing it together. Ellen's been steppin' out with some fella named Mike, meeting him at a cabin, and I needed the truth, cold and hard, like a spark plug that won't fire. No more wonderin', no more hoppin', it was nothin'. I had to see it for myself. So I grabbed my thermos, filled it with black coffee strong enough to wake a beer, and set out to catch her in the act. You folks ever feel that mix of nerves and guts when you're facing something big? That's me, driven down Highway 55, heart racing, but hands steady as a rock. I'd done my homework the night before. Sneaky I know, but desperate times call for it. Ellen keeps her GPS history on that Ford Escape. And I'd found an address for a 20-acre cabin she'd listed last year, tucked off a dirt road near Lucky Peak Lake, about 15 miles out of Boise. She'd mentioned it once. A cute fixer-upper. She'd sold to some out-of-towner, but that text from Mike. Can't wait for Thursday at the cabin. Told me it wasn't just a memory. I borrowed Matt's beat-up Chevy pickup. Didn't want her spotting my old Dodge Ram. And headed out round noon, figuring she'd leave after lunch like she said. Told Matt I was hauling scrap. He just nodded, busy with his kids, and didn't ask twice. I parked half a mile down from the cabin, behind a stand of pines, the air sharp with that late fall bite. Pine needles, damp earth. A hint of wood smoke driftin' from somewhere. I hoofed it closer, keepin' low like I was huntin' deer back in my 20s with Dad, my boots crunchin', soft on the gravel. The lake shimmered through the trees. A slate gray mirror under a cloudy sky, and I could hear it lappin' gentle in the distance. Peaceful, if it weren't for the storm in my chest. I found a stump about 50 yards from the cabin. Squat and weathered, and crouched there, breath fogging in the chill. Took maybe 20 minutes. Felt like hours. Then I heard tires on dirt. Ellen's Ford Escape rolled up, dust kicking behind it, and she stepped out, looking sharp in a navy coat I'd bought her last Christmas. My throat caught, seeing her so normal, like she was just heading to work. Then a shiny BMW pulled in. Black, sleek. The kind of car you don't see much round here. And out climbs this slick fella. Mid-50s, I'd guess, hair too perfect, a flashy watch glintin' as he waved at her. Mike, I reckoned, and my stomach twisted. They walked into the cabin, laughin' like old pals, her hand brushin' his arm easy like, and I watched, frozen, as the door clicked shut. I edged closer, stayin' low. Till I could peek through the window. Curtains half open, giving me a clear shot. And there it was. Ellen and Mike standing close, her smiling up at him leanin' in. Then they kissed. Long and slow, like they'd done it 100 times. Felt like a sledgehammer to the chest, knockin' the wind out of me. 40 years of marriage flashin' before my eyes in that 1 second. Our first date at the drive, in grease on the screen, popcorn stuck in her hair as we laughed. The day Matt came screamin' into the world, her squeezin' my hand till it bruised. Me promisin' her the moon. Quiet nights on the porch, just us and the crickets, her head on my shoulder as the stars popped out. All those moments, and here she was, lips on some stranger's. Like I was nothing's buckled, but I caught myself. Didn't fall, didn't cry. Now, I got mad, then I got smart. I pulled out my Nikon. Been taking pictures since I retired. Mostly sunsets over the foothills, Russ posin' by the creek. Snapped a few shots, quick and quiet. Her hand on his arm, his grin too wide, that kiss frozen in the lens. Each click felt like taking back a piece of me she'd stolen, like I was building a wall round what was mine. My mama used to say, "You don't lose unless you quit." And her voice rang in my ears, pushing me on. I wasn't quittin'. Not now, not ever. The shutter clicked soft, barely a whisper, and I got him clear as day. proof I could hold, proof I could fight with. My breath steadied. The cold bit in my fingers, but I didn't care. I had what I needed, and it lit a fire in me hotter than a July noon. Here's where it gets better, folks. I called my buddy Hank, an ex-cop who lives 3 houses down. Known him since '78, when he'd pull me over for speeding and let me off with a grin. "Jet over here quick," I said, voice low. "I need a witness." Hank's 70, tough as nails, and he didn't ask why. Just said, "Jim 15, and Hunup showed up in his beat-up Jeep, gray hair sticking out under a ball cap, and parked a ways off so they wouldn't hear. He trudged up quiet as a shadow, and crouched beside me, peering through the trees. "What's the deal, Jim?" he whispered, but I just pointed. Ellen and Mike were coming out now, her fixing her hair, him lighting a cigarette like he owned the place. Hank's jaw tightened, but he didn't say nothing. Just watched. Giving me strength with that steady look of his. You know how it is, folks. Good friends don't need to talk, they show up when the ground's shaking. And Hank was there. Solid as the Rockies. We got a few more pics. Ellen laughing, Mike blowing smoke. The cabin door swinging shut behind him. Then we hightailed it back to the truck, keeping low, my boots slipping, a bit on the damp leaves. My hands were steady, but inside I was a mess. Hurt cutting deep, but that fire burning brighter. Driven home with Hank, sun setting over the hills in a blaze of orange. We didn't say much. Just nodded, knowing I'd caught her cold. The lake faded in the rearview. A pretty lie I wouldn't forget. And I gripped the wheel tight, feeling the weight of it all. That day wasn't just about catching her. It was about me, standing up after a fall. Folks, it hurt like heck, no denying it. Felt like losing a partner I trusted with my whole dang life. 40 years, birthdays, Christmases, scrapping, by when the shop tanked. Gone in a flash through that window. But it wasn't the end. It was a reckoning. I wasn't some old fool she could play. I'd built this life, sweated for it, and I wasn't letting her trash it. You ever stand at a crossroads, folks, and pick the hard path 'cause it's right? That's me, heading back to Boys with Hank. Knowing I had what I needed to fight. The hurt was there, sure, a dull ache I couldn't shake. But so was something else. Pride, strength, a fire I hadn't felt since I hauled my shop out of debt in '92. Hang on, 'cause it's about to get good, I promise ya that. Friday morning, folks. Ellen waltzed in like nothing happened. Talking about a tough sale. Over her coffee like we were still playing house. I'd been up half the night, them cabin pics and that condom box burning a hole in my mind, but I kept my cool. Didn't let on a thing. I'm Jim Harrison, 67, and after seeing her with that Mike fella, I wasn't letting this slide without setting it straight. She stood there, stirring sugar into her mug, chattering about some couple from Caldwell, and I watched her, quiet like, waiting for my moment. The kitchen smelled of toast and Folgers, sun streaming through the blinds, and it hit me. This was our space, 40 years of mornings just like this, and she'd turned it into a lie. I set my own mug down slow and deliberate, and pulled out my ammo. Condoms, diner receipt, text screenshot, cabin pics. Lay 'em out on the table right next to the sugar bowl. Neat as you please. Care to explain, Ellen? I asked, voice steady as a rock, eyes locked on hers. She froze, cup halfway to her mouth, then set it down real slow. Eyes darting from the pile to me like a deer caught in headlights. Her face went pale, lips parting like she'd say something. But nothing came out at first. Just a stammer. Jim. It's not what it looks like. I raised an eyebrow, leaning back in my chair. Old trick from dealin' with shifty customers at the shop, who'd swear their car was fine till it smoked. Really? I said, tapping the pics with a finger. 'Cause it looks like you've been steppin' out with some slick fella named Mike. Cabin ring a bell. She flinched, hands twisting in her lap, and I saw the jig was up. She took a breath, then spilled it. Been seeing Mike for months. A big fish. Client she'd met last spring. Said it just happened that she felt invisible since cutting back work, like I hadn't seen her every darn day for 40 years. Invisible. After all we'd been through. I cooked her eggs sunny side up every Sunday, cheered her on when she sold that big place on Hill Road back in 2 or 3, sat through her real estate courses when she wanted a change. I told her. 40 years ain't invisible to me, Ellen. You made that choice, not me. My voice stayed firm, but inside it cut deep. Her saying that after I'd given her everything. My whole life wrapped up in ours. Ain't no excuse good enough for lying to my face, not after all we'd built. House paid off, kids raised, grandkids running round the yard. Her eyes welled up, tears spilling over, but I didn't budge. Felt a pang, sure, seeing her like that, but I wasn't buying it. She'd played me, and them tears weren't gonna fix it. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered, voice cracking. It was a mistake. I shook my head. Mistakes forgettin' the groceries, Ellen. This was a choice, months of it. Hank was there. Sittin' at the counter with a cup of black coffee. My backup, my witness. He'd come over early when I called, knowin' I'd need him for this. Gave me a nod like, "You got this, Jim," and that meant more'n words could say. I turned back to Ellen, standin' now, arms crossed over my flannel. "Ellen, I built this life for us. 40 years of sweat, late nights at the shop, savin' every dime. Not for you to toss it in the trash with some hotshot in a fancy car. Pack your bags, we're done." My voice didn't shake, folks. It was strong, like when I'd hoist an engine block alone back in the day, muscles strainin', but holdin' steady. She stared mouth open, then started packing excuses. Said she'd end it. Begged me to talk it out. Promised it'd never happen again. But I'd seen enough through that cabin window. Her lavin' with him wasn't a one-time slip. It was a life she'd chosen. And I wasn't in it. I kept it classy, no yellin', just facts. Calm as a still lake, though my insides were churnin'. Told her I'd already called Sue, my lawyer Paul from church. And we were throupers comin' fast. Hank piped up, "You sure about this, Jim?" Voice low, testin' me gentle like, and I nodded. Darn right I was. Ellen grabbed a suitcase from the hall closet, mutterin' 'bout needing space. Hands shakin', as she stuffed clothes in. Blouses I'd ironed, dresses I'd zipped her into for lodge dances. I let her go, didn't slam the door, didn't curse. Just watched her walk out, tires crunchin' on the gravel as she pulled away. The house went quiet, just me and Hank, coffee gone cold on the counter. He clapped my shoulder. Didn't say much, didn't need to. You folks know that feelin', when you've been kicked but you get up swingin'. That's me, standin' in my kitchen, knowin' I'd held my ground. It wasn't easy, seeing her eyes go wide, knowin' she'd lost me for good, tore at me some. Part of me saw the girl I'd met at 25, dancin' to Elvis at the county fair. Her hair bouncin' as she twirled. We'd been kids then, scrappin' by in that drafty rental, dreamin' of a house like this one. 4 bedrooms, a porch swing, a garage I'd turned into my haven. That girl was gone though. Replaced by someone who'd rather sneak around than face me, who'd painted a life with another man, while I fixed her car, and mowed our lawn. I wasn't backing down. Not at my age, not after giving her my all. Sittin' there with Hank after she left, the clock tickin' soft on the wall, I felt a weight lift. Not all at once, but steady, like easin' a jack from under a chassis after a long repair. I'd faced the truth, and I was still standin'. Hurt, sure, a dull ache I couldn't shake, but standin' all the same. Folks, that moment was a reckonin'. 40 years of mornin's like this one, toast burnin', coffee brewin', kids hollerin' down the hall, all crashin' down in a heap. Hurt like a son of a gun, no denyin' it. Felt like losin' a piece of my history, a partner I'd trusted with everything. But it was more'n that. It was me sayin', I'm worth more'n this. I'd spent decades fixin' what's broke. Cars that wouldn't run, fights with Matt when he was a punk teenager, that leaky roof in '99, when the rain wouldn't quit. This wasn't mine to fix though. She broke it, deliberate and cold, and I wasn't patchin' it up. The kitchen felt bigger without her. Sunlight hittin' the table where them pics still sat. And I let out a long breath, feelin' the quiet settle. Hank grinned, just a little. "You're tougher'n me, Jim." And I chuckled, first time since Tuesday. Maybe I was. You ever take a hit, folks, and realize you're stronger than you thought? That's where I was. Mad, sad, all of it swirlin', but proud too. I'd built this life. Every nail in this house, every dollar saved. Every oil-stained shirt. And I wasn't letting her take that from me. Sue was waitin', papers ready. And I had a new road ahead, one I'd walk with my head up. The hurt linger. I ain't fool enough to think it wouldn't. But so would that fire, that strength I found in me. Ellen might have thought she'd won, sneaking off with her fancy fella. But she didn't know Jim Harrison. Not really, stay tuned. 'Cause this old dog's got a happy endin' comin', and I'm tacking ya along for it. So folks, I met Sue that afternoon at the diner off I-84. Best apple pie and boys hands down, and a view of the trucks rollin', by that'd make any gearhead grin. I'm Jim Harrison, 67. And after catchin' Ellen with that Mike fella, I wasn't wastin' time. Had to get this mess sorted and move on. Sue's my lawyer Paul, sharp as a tack. Known her since she handled my shop's lease back in '89 when I nearly lost it all. We sat in a corner booth, vinyl seats creaking under us. The smell of fried grace and coffee thick in the air. I laid it all out. Condoms in the car, diner receipt from Nampa, text from Mike, them cabin pics I'd snapped with Hank standin' witness. Sue nodded, scribblin' notes on a yellow pad, her glasses slidden down her nose as she listened. "Jim," she said, settin' her pen down, "Idaho's no fault. So it's a 50 or 50 split on the joint stuff. House, savings, all that. But your pension's yours, and since it's paid the mortgage, she's out of there. You keep the place. 500 square feet, all yours. I leaned back, letting that sink in. House was mine, that ranch-style beauty with the porch swing and the garage I'd turned into my world. Been ours since '92. Bought it for under $5,000 after scrappin' buy-in rentals. Every payment a battle one with late nights at the shop. Ellen'd have to go, and I'd keep Rusty, our 10-year-old lab who's been my shadow since Matt brought him home as a pup. Sue grinned, knowing how much that mutt means to me. He's yours, Jim, no question. Ellen moved to a condo 30 miles off in Meridian, funded by her real estate savings. Plenty to keep her comfy. But not my problem no more. Sue said it'd be quick. Papers filed Monday, her out by week's end. I felt a quiet justice settle in, like when an engine purrs after a long fix, smooth and right. No yellin', no courtroom drama. Just done, clean as a whistle. Word spread fast at the Elks Lodge. Folks whisperin' over their Wednesday meatloaf about Ellen and Mike, how he ditched her quick once the dust settled. Judy, Ellen's pal from way back, cornered me at the bar, eyes wide. Heard Mike dropped her Jim. Left her high and dry after she moved out. She's a mess. Crying to anyone who'll listen. I sipped my coffee, black as night, and shrugged. Justice didn't need me dancing on her grave, she'd dug it herself. Didn't gloat, folks. Just sat there. Feelin' the rightness of it, like when a cheater at cards gets caught and slinks off. You know that quiet win when the bad guy trips over his own feet? That's how it was. Ellen played her hand, and it folded fast. I tipped my mug to Judy, said, "Life's funny, ain't it?" And let it be. Wasn't my circus no more. Here's where it gets good, folks. I turned my garage into a workshop, started a car restoration class at the senior center down on Main Street. Been teachin' folks my age to fix up classics. Kicking it off with a '72 Chevy Nova I found rustin' in a barn out by Kuna. Paid $30,000 cash, hauled it home on a flatbed with Matt's help. First class I had 6 fellas and gals show up. Pete, a retired plumber with hands like hams. Doris, a widow who'd driven hot rods in the '60s. And 4 others, all eager to get dirty. We'd wrench away under the fluorescent lights, grease smearing our shirts, laughing over old stories. Mine about Ellen got a few chuckles, but mostly we talked cars. Pete said one day, wrenchin' a fender, "Jim, you're a dang inspiration. Thought my days of learnin' were over till this." Hit me right in the chest, folks. Made me feel 10 feet tall, knowin' I was givin' something real. We got that Nova purrin', by December, cherry red paint gleamin'. And I swear Doris cried when it fired up. Said it reminded her of her late husband's ride. Then I joined a fishing club. Bunch of old timers who meet at the Snake River every Saturday, poles in hand, coolers packed with beer and sandwiches. Caught a 15-pound trout my first trip out. Fightin' that beast for 20 minutes till it flopped on the bank, scales flashin' in the sun. Rusty barked like he'd hooked it himself, tail waggin' wild, and the fellas cheered, called me Trout King, till I blushed. Sittin' by that water line slack in my hand, I felt peace creep in, slow and sure. Like the sun resin over the foothills after a long night. Ain't nothin' fancy. Just me, the river, and a quiet I hadn't known I'd lost. Used to fish with Ellen sometimes. Her complainin' about the mud, but this was mine now. No shadows, just clear sky and a good catch. You folks ever find that spot where the world makes sense again? That's me, pole in hand, breathin' easy. And there's more. I've been seeing a gal, Linda, 66. Tough as nails and twice as sweet. Met her at the senior center. She's a painter, does these mountain scenes that make you cry. All jagged peaks and golden light. First date, we grabbed burgers at Hawkins Pack Out, a greasy joint off Overland, and swapped stories till they flipped the closed sign. She's divorced too. Caught her ex cheatin' 10 years back and kicked him to the curb. Didn't take no guff. Just rebuilt her life with a paintbrush and a steel spine. She's got a laugh that lights up the room. Deep and warm. And my kids, Matt and Sarah, reckon she's a keeper. Met her at Sarah's place over coffee. And she won him over with stories of reddin' horses as a kid. Took her fishin' last week. She outed me with a 17-pounder, grin into her ear as she reeled it in, mud on her boots and not a care. Folks, she's the real deal. Strong, honest, and she gets me. Sees the man I am, not the mess I left behind. Ain't that something after all this? At 67, I'm findin' love again, and it feels like a gift I didn't see comin'. Here's the thing. I didn't just lose a wife that day, I gained a life, one I'm proud to live. Sittin' on my porch now with Rusty, watchin' the stars pop out over boys, I'm stronger'n ever. Ellen's betrayal cut deep. 40 years ain't nothin' to sneeze at, a whole history of us tangled up in this house, these hills. It hurt like a son of a gun, seein' her choose some slick feller over me. Paint in a world I wasn't part of. But it didn't break me, not even close. I faced it, fought it and built something better. Class in the garage, fishing with the boys, Linda's hand in mine. You folks ever wonder what you'd do if the rug got pulled out? I'm proof ya don't let it bury ya. You dig out and plant new roots. That garage class, them river days, Linda smile. It's all mine. Earned fair and square with every drop of sweat I've poured into this life. I think back sometimes. Ellen laughin' at the VFW, us paintin' that first rental. Her holdin' Matt when he was born. It's a ghost now, a story that ended rough, but it don't own me. I'm 67, I ain't done livin'. Not by a long shot. Boys is still home, same Foothalls resin dark against the sky. Same creek babblin' out back, but it's mine in a new way. Rusty nudges my hand, gray muzzle restin' on my knee, and I scratch his ears, feelin' the quiet settle. You don't let betrayal stop ya, you turn it into fuel, and that's my tale. Hope it gives ya a lift, folks, 'cause if I can climb out of this, so can you. Life's too short to quit. And I'm proof it gets better. Darn good even, when you take it back and make it yours. Now folks, I've got one more thing to say before I let you go. I ain't tellin' this just to hear myself talk. It's about sharing a piece of life with y'all. Hoppin' it sparks something in ya. Maybe a little fire to keep going when the road gets rough. I'm Jim Harrison. Just a boys fella who took a hit and came up swingin', and if this tale of mine, condoms, cabins, and all, gave ya a lift, I'd sure appreciate a little nod. Maybe a like or a share with your pals who might need to hear it. Folks facin' their own storms, lookin' for a light. And if ya wanna stick around for more yarns from this old jarhead, hittin' that subscribe button mean the world to me. Keep this porch chat rollin'. 'Cause I reckon we've all got stories worth tellin'. And I ain't done yet. Took me a while to get here, 6-7 years of wrenchin', lovin', losin', and findin' my way back. That Tuesday in October 2025, when I found them condoms, I thought my world was crumblin'. 40 years with Ellen up in smoke, a knife in the back I didn't see comin'. But sittin' here now, coffee mug steamin', in the cool night air, I see it different. Wasn't the end. It was a shove, a hard one, pushin' me to grab what's mine and build something stronger. Ellen's out there, livin' her mess. I hear whispers at the lodge, her condo quiet. Mike long gone, but I ain't lookin' back. I've got my garage hummin' with that Nova's growl, my fishin' pole waitin' by the door, Linda's laugh echoing in my ears, and my kids cheerin' me on. That's what I found when the dust settled. Not just a divorce but a life, full and real. You folks ever hit a wall and think it's over? I did. Stood in that garage, holdin' that box, feelin' the floor drop. But I climbed out, one step at a time, and I'm tellin' ya, it's worth it. Don't matter if you're 67 like me, or younger or older. You got fight in ya, same as me. Them pics I snapped Hank by my side, Sue's steady hand, they got me through, but it was me who said, enough, and meant it. So if this story lit a spark, maybe a grin, a nod, a thought to keep pushin', pass it on. Share it with someone who's down, who needs a nudge to stand tall. Like it if it hit you right, and if you wanna hear more. How that Nova's runnin', what Linda's paintin', or my next big catch, give that subscribe a tap. Ain't no pressure, just a quiet ask from me to you. Let's keep this going, swap some tales, lift each other up. Thanks for listenin', folks. Means more'n ya know. See ya next time, right here on the porch.